Okay, so we're recording.
Good evening, everyone. Today is February 17th, 2022. This is a special board meeting of the Beverly Hills Unified School District Board of Education. We are in open session and I would like to call the meeting to order. Rebecca, would you like to do the flag salute?
I would be honored. I
Okay.
don't know if I'm allowed to do it, but I keep doing it as a non-citizen. Please stand, place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated.
Thank you so much.
So can I make a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes 5-0.
President Wells, I understand that Mr. Halimi has a time limit. Is there any way that we can let him share any thoughts or anything preliminary? I know staff hasn't spoken yet, but I think he should get a chance to opine if he wants to.
I really appreciate that. No, I would like to try to see the staff presentation first before I comment, but thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. I appreciate it.
May I have approval? Dr. Brady, is there closed session action report?
There's no action in closed session.
Thank you very much.
Then,
Is there any public comment?
There's no public comment.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we are at Education Services, discussion implementing universal transitional kindergarten.
Can I make a statement before we start, please?
Yes, Mrs. Marcus.
I'm a little bit disturbed about the fact that we're about to make a presentation on this universal, not that I'm opposed to it, believe me, I'm not opposed to it, but I have no information in front of me that I can really look at and understand before the presentation. I really thought that we should have had some material beforehand so that we could have studied it, so that we would have been a little bit more able to ask questions and understand the presentation. I know that when it was presented at the last meeting, I said the same thing. I wished I would have had something in my hands to understand and see the program and I could review it beforehand. So I am very upset that I did not get that information and I just wanted that to go on record.
Rochelle, did you get the attachments with all of the policies?
Yes, that did not
Okay.
include universal transition, the universal transition. It only included the new policies regarding transitional kindergarten.
So
I could tell, maybe I'm wrong, but I only saw the new transitional kindergarten. It did not include the universal transition kindergarten.
Okay,
So yeah, and there's not a lot. We've provided some updated information. We've been working, we're under a deadline for our open enrollment. But I hear you loud and clear. And if we can share the presentation, we could share this information with you now.
Well, okay.
is that good, Rochelle?
Well, I'd just like to say that then you're going to share this information with me now and I have to make some decisions. And even though it does not call for a vote, it does say that, and I want to know how that's going to impact the second one that we're going to discuss, because that's also on the agenda and that has to do with the transitional program. So how will they impact each other? There's some very serious questions that I have about that also.
Okay, my suggestion is that we let them do the presentation and see if it answers any of those immediate
wanted to
questions
make
you have,
that
Rochelle.
statement. Yeah,
Right, and then we can continue on with the discussion. I think would be good. Thanks. Michael, would you like to start?
Yes. Rebecca, can you share your screen? Do you have the presentation?
I do. Unfortunately, I don't have the settings.
Oh, hang on.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry.
No problem.
See if you have them now. Great. Can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Great. So we're going to take a little bit of time today. It's not a very lengthy presentation, but we did hear board questions and we wanted to elaborate a little bit more on where we are with the expansion of a program that we have, which is Transitional Kindergarten, otherwise known as TK. So next slide. We've had some discussions about the fact that this is such an opportunity that the state of California and championed by Governor Newsom to provide more opportunities, more exposure for students inside the classroom through transitional kindergarten. And that's done through the enrollment process. And so it's done through extending and that date where students are eligible. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. That does include a board policy change. This is a policy that has changed before a couple of years ago. And when that date changes, that's also a requirement for us to look at for our board policy. So we did send you, and you should have just the full board policy, which is the first one is you have the CSBA recommended policies. And then just for transparency, we did CSBA recommended, and then we did the current and then the proposed. So you can see what that is and where that language changes. It's not a great deal of change to the policy. The most important part is just the date. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So we're also going to include, we had an opportunity to, with our new demographers who just did all of this data, to incorporate into the enrollment projections, those numbers for potential new students as TK students. And it was very timely that we had that done, and they actually had that data. They were able to give us that overnight. And then we're going to talk a little about the financial projections and some of the support grants and kind of next steps. Next slide.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about this slide. What you're looking at is our brand new enrollment center website that has just launched this week. You'll have more information available about it in Board Connection, but it is live if you want to go to it and click through it. It's amazing. It's the fruition of a goal that I had when I first arrived here, that I spoke with Dr. Breggy, of being able to have TK through 12th grade enrollment all in one place in the district. It used to be in different places, but we are combining them now. And as you can see, we have a countdown going. This is not live, but if you go on the website, it's live. Like Dr. Breggy mentioned, open enrollment for the district starts next week on Tuesday, on the 22nd. So since we cannot open TK in isolation, we needed to have this conversation with the board today to talk about what the parameters will be for TK. And those are the things that we want to discuss with you and lay out for you today. Currently, our TK enrollment is from August 31st through December 31st. There are new rules through the state that Dustin will talk about shortly that are now moving the date further back to allow younger children access. But the main thing for us is we need board direction on what date we're going to choose. Since our last board meeting, we've been receiving a lot of calls in my department about TK from parents wanting to know what we're going to do and what will they be able to enroll for next week. So that's why this conversation is time sensitive.
Laura, can I interrupt for 1 second? Did you say the current deadline for age 5 is August 31st to December 1st?
August, yes, based on our current policy. But now the state has moved that December deadline back to February 2nd minimum. But I'm going to let Dustin go a little bit more into detail because he's going to talk about the impact on programming and I can help with the impact on enrollment or anything. But right now our current policy is August 31st through December 31st. yes, and that's for any kid, for any child can enroll with the birth date of that into our transitional kindergarten program.
Absolutely. And thank you, Laura. I'm going to jump in. And Mrs. Marcus, I want to alleviate any stress or anxiety around this presentation. The great part about Beverly Hills itself is we've been offering transitional kindergarten previous to 2015. So this is what's great about Beverly Hills is it's not a new program to Beverly Hills. We've always offered transitional kindergarten, and even under this current administration, and even while you've been on the Board of Education, we've offered 2 sections, one at Horace Mann and one at Hawthorne. Elizabeth Smith and Annette Goldstein have taught those classes. Yep, go ahead, Rochelle.
I'm not concerned about the TK. I'm concerned about this word UTK.
Well, so the terminology in the law just says universal TK, meaning a lot of school districts do not offer it. And now they're opening up universally across the state. So it's a play on terms in the bill. It does not impact anything instructionally of what we were delivering in our current TK classrooms. Nothing instructionally has changed. A lot of our surrounding districts did not offer TK because it was not compulsory or mandatory by the government. Now, Governor Newsom is stating not only if you haven't offered it before, you now have to offer it. And then if you have offered it, it's extending the timeline throughout over a 5-year span, where then by 2025, all, meaning universal, all 4-year-olds in the state will have access to education from a unified system versus having to seek out preschool programs and have to pay for it. So the governor is now putting in his budget that he's saying, we back this, we want this for all students, and that's where the universal comes from. But it is still, okay. Go ahead. No.
Sorry, President Wells, I need to indicate that Mr. Halimi had to step away from the meeting. He may be back, but he wanted me to let everybody know on the record.
Okay, thank you.
And can I correct one thing that I said too? It's August 1st through December.
That's what I was trying to clarify.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
And so it is transitional kindergarten, and that's what we're talking about. And we already offer it in the district. The changes that we're bringing to the Board of Education for consideration are obviously Laura's department has to bring the board policy, because in our current board policy, you'll see on this slide on the top, it clearly states that we have a cutoff of December 31st. So if we were to only follow the current law that the Governor Newsom had put in, we would be changing that December 31st date to February 2nd. That already is kind of dictated to us by the governor's office and then also by the California Department of Education.
Is that immediate?
It is for the 20, it's for the 22-23 school year. We have to start enrolling students that have a cutoff of the February 2nd. Then for the following year, the law states that then we have to start accepting April 2nd deadline. And then the following year, which is the 24 year, we have to move it to June 2nd. With then by 25-26, every school district in the state must allow any student from basically whatever, all the way up until that June 30th deadline, but it goes up to September 2nd in 25-26, meaning that's when we'll start to almost see 3-year-olds enrolling in the district. But I'm going to pause this there for a second and separate this. The 3-year-old conversation cannot happen because of Ed Code until 25-26. So we as cabinet and site administration are not making the recommendation to get in anywhere near that birthday cutoff because it's not allowed by the California Department of Education or the governor's office. What is allowed at this time is to bypass the February 2nd and go all the way to the June 30th deadline. That is allowed, and within our district, we have to go to February 2nd. We could go all the way to June 30th. And you'll see that is the recommendation that we're bringing to the Board of Education for consideration this evening, is you'll see our old policy on the top, then our next policy where the eligibility clause states, in the orange, it says occurs by June 30th. So we're now opening up all the way instead of waiting each year. Partially, next slide.
It's June 30th or June 2nd?
The law says June 2nd, but we can go up till June 30th. So meaning the law was set arbitrarily February 2nd, April 2nd, June 2nd, and then by 25, you have to allow everybody up to the June 30th. The school calendar goes July 1st to June 30th.
Understood.
Yep. And so then in 25, and you can see the little chart, it's a little difficult to see, but you'll see the orange line in the upper right chart. That 25 is off limits. We cannot do that until 25. It allows all the school districts to catch up to kind of basically where we've already been allowing our transitional kindergarten students to come on campus.
Can you do me one favor in this, Dustin, please?
Yep.
You do this. Yeah, that's what I've been trying to say. You're starting the kids, next fall, expand the offer to 4-year-olds whose birthday occurs between September 2nd and February 2nd.
Correct.
Okay, to 4-year-olds. So if they are, I'm just trying to clarify this. If they are 4 years old and they turn 5 on September 2nd, they start the TK program?
Yep. So the law is written, and you got to remember, we're a very small school district in a big sea of fish, right? So it's written around Los Angeles Unified School District, who typically start in San Francisco and San Diego after Labor Day. That's the one that falls in September, Labor Day. Sorry, I apologize.
I do too.
Yeah. So that's the policy is written around like, we start school on September 2nd. We do not. We start school much earlier. So our policy starts in August, right? So it goes all the way up. So the important piece on the legislation is to see the cutoff date, and the start date is arbitrary because we start much earlier. We, start August 12th, 13th, 14th. So any student that would turn before February 2nd is eligible to enroll on our, February 22nd enrollment date. What we're bringing to you, as you can see that orange arrow, is we're saying we feel that we are equipped to accelerate to the deadline that the hard stop in which the government will not allow us to go to. So we're saying we don't need that year 1, year 2, year 3, we're already offering the program. We understand the instruction. We have 2 really excellent teachers leading and willing to mentor any new teachers that come on board, that we can accelerate past the February 2nd, April 2nd, and June 2nd years and go right to the end of the actual school year.
May I ask a question?
Yep.
So what's the advantage of accelerating it as opposed to a slower rollout? Even though we're not as big as LAUSD, why put that on the district if you can roll it out slower?
So that's a great question, President Wells, and something we've grappled with as soon as the legislation came out. It's a couple folds, if that makes sense. One is, if we're already making changes, not instructionally, but to moving maybe a classroom or shifting a teacher or trying to create little pods where our transitional kids can be together. If we're already moving them for 1 class, why wouldn't we move them for 2 classes? So if we're already going to we learned that through Reconfiguration, that if you're already going to make a shift structurally inside your building, it's easier than each year we have to then shift another classroom or move another teacher or ask another teacher to teach a different level. Because we know that the students are out there. And so by taking it on, it's easier to make the move once than to make the move every year for 3 years up to possibly 4 years. So that's just the logistics and structural piece of it, is if we're already going to have people in there moving around stuff, or we're doing a purchase order to order furniture, it may be easier to just order them all at once than to say, okay, each year and every year after, we're going to have to continue to do this and make the teachers a little frustrated.
And also, Dustin, if I could just chime in with, there's just a need. There's such a need in our school district. Laura can tell you that I mean, I just the parents that call, and there's always a group of parents that just miss that cutoff. And and we're not like other school districts. We're very fortunate. We have students that are ready to learn at an earlier age. And so to provide them with that experience when they are ready to learn, that's, we lose some students. Some parents will say, look, if I can't get a TK setting, preschool's not the right thing for my child, then sometimes they go private.
I just like to point out that we have two separate programs here. We have a TK program, and you're talking about a UTK program. These are two separate things.
No, they're the same.
They're the same, Mrs. Marcus. It's just the way that they use the term in the law. It's just saying it's going to be universal for everybody, but it's still transitional kindergarten. The term universal is only saying that the whole state will have it. It'll be a universal policy for all school districts.
But
So as an example, go ahead, Rochelle, I'm sorry.
But for example, a child born May 15th, okay, under the TK program, the TK program we have now, they can not enroll because it says that they, under the policy that we're changing, they can come in if their birthday is, they cannot start reducing it to June 30th. So if a child reaches his 5th birthday after June 30th, he can start in kindergarten, correct?
Yes. So what we're doing really in this law, and I'm going to simplify it a second, is we already accept TK, so this isn't a new program to the district. We're just taking the date and shifting it. So we're allowing more students access to our curriculum and our instruction and our teachers versus waiting while they're enrolled in a preschool and then either hoping that they come to the district and or catching them up, because we do see a significant change in our TK kids versus the kids that may have attended a different program. A lot of our TK kids that go into our kinder program obviously are comfortable on campus. They feel safe. They know the teachers. They've been introduced to the playground. They understand the structure of our school day. So there's a lot of benefits, not only for the student itself, for the family, but also I'm going to go back to President Wells is it's also around, I talked about logistics, we talked about student focus and family focus, but also around our teacher education. So as we're bringing on possibly 2, 3, or possibly 4 new teachers to teach TK, we want to create that cohort and mentoring format, right? That professional development and learning for them to have like an Elizabeth Smith and an Annette Goldstein mentor them in that process. And so instead of onboarding new ones each and every year, we can get that cohort of teachers in play where then we have that mentoring opportunity. We have the instructional coach in the district that can support us. Dr. Horvath and myself, Ed Services and Personnel Services, are working on looking at bringing in an outside partner under our Educators Effectiveness Grant to also help us teach some of these early literacy strategies that we can incorporate into the program and make it even stronger, because Annette and Elizabeth have done an amazing job, but they've also been on an island, right? They've only had each other to collaborate. And now we're possibly bringing on additional colleagues that they can collaborate with. So it's a professional development thing for our teachers. It's a logistics thing. If we're already moving stuff around, let's move it and be prepared for it. Ordering supplies, those types of things, need from the community, but also we do see a significant difference between the kids that have been on Hawthorne and Horace Mann campus going into kinder versus the kids that are coming from a different program, joining our kinder classes for the first time.
So I'm going to stop you right there for 1 second. So I think, Amanda, you had your hand up, so I wanted to give you a chance.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, I totally agree in principle. The problem is, and probably maybe you've thought about this logistically and developmentally, but, so you're proposing that, say, starting next school year, we're going to have 4-year-olds, younger 4-year-olds, because they can come onto campus at the start of the year as long as they turn 5 by February 3rd, correct?
February 2nd, yep.
I mean, February, okay. So, a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old can be starkly different. One main thing, you know, what I'm going to say is the potty training issue. I have found that these days, whereas potty training used to be completely mastered by age 3, I'm seeing a lot of 4-year-olds with some toileting issues, which isn't necessarily a problem, but you know, there has to be the attendant, you know, the toilet, the bathrooms that are, you know, adjoining, and then smaller sinks, and then also. Is there some sort of credentialing or certification that might need to be acquired for this new cohort? Or did you say that the existing teachers you already have are more than are primed to deal with this younger influx?
Yep. And so let me, can I do the projections? Because everything, Mandy, you addressed is on our next slide.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask, just to clarify, so they have to be 4 by February 2nd, or it's their 5th birthday is by February 2nd, but they start August before.
Yep. So
Start in August as long as they turn 5 by February.
By February 3rd. They
And
can
then
come on
what you're
campus at the start of
suggesting,
the year.
right? But what you're suggesting is instead of what is mandated, which is the 4-year-olds that turn 5 by February can start school this August, that you're going to extend it to younger 4-year-olds that turn 5 by June.
Later, yeah.
Yep.
So February, March, April, May, June. So there's a 4-month difference with the kids.
Totally. And I just want to recall is, so under the TK law, we're going to have to do this regardless. So
Right, you're going to get there no matter what. Gotcha.
Yep, we're going to get there no matter what. And what we're coming to you is stating, and let me kind of go back to the slides real fast. Right here, what you guys will see is Davis, our King demographics, Mr. Roach worked on getting us some of the projected numbers. And you'll look, I want to point out the 22-23 school year. And we always kind of look at that moderate level. Right. And so the moderate level basically states that we'll have about 117 students possibly enroll. Okay. And we know that in our district, we are already going to offer 2 transitional kindergarten courses regardless. And that would have been 46 students. So we're adding about another 50 or so, close to maybe 60 students into this mix by accelerating the law to June 30th. And so what does that mean? Right now, and I'm just going to kind of talk sectionings just slightly, kind of from that impact of what you need to consider is we already run about 8 sections of kindergarten. And so by the time that this law fully goes out, we'll be offering anywhere between 6 to 8 sections of transitional kindergarten. We already offer 2. So eventually the growth may be to that 5 or 6. We do know that there are, just like kindergarten, some families that do choose whether they a private school due to a religious reason or just a developmental. They want their kid to go to a private school in those earlier ages, that foundational ages, and then come to us at high school or middle school. So we're anticipating in this proposal about that 117 mark. And that's where those numbers came from the projections from the demographic study. Rebecca?
Can I say one thing right there for a second, please, Dustin? The other thing I need you guys, the board to understand is, like Dr. Breggy alluded to, we currently run 2 sections with 21 students in each section, but every year we turn away families because we don't have enough space, and we have a waiting list that if a child moves or the parent withdraws them, then we call them and say, we have a spot for you. So we already have the need. We only have 2 sections, and that's all we can fill.
But if you only have room for 2 classes right now, you don't have the space, and you're anticipating.
We do. This is what we've been running prior to this law being passed. We have the space, and Dustin will talk about that.
Yep. And so ultimately,
I think Mandy had a question.
Oh, no, just trying to look smart.
Okay.
Noah has a question.
Thank you. So I'm hearing from our conversation last week, you were talking about adding 1 or 2 more sections this coming year.
Or
Well, yeah, but the numbers are showing that you might have to add 3 or 4 sections based on what your numbers are showing.
Yep. And so in our, because we didn't have the demographic study, we didn't have those projections. And again, these are also projections. Like we could open up enrollment and only have to run 3 sections because we always do our data analysis. We always run our sectioning and we bring that to the Board of Education and show you guys, we have, 54 TK students actually only enrolled. We thought 117 were going to come. We're just planning for that. But again, the hiring process comes after the enrollment process. So we're not going to hire any new teachers or order any new furniture or create any classrooms until we have the enrollment to back those decisions.
Right.
So-
I have a question.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Noah.
No, go ahead, Mary. Come on.
And the costs I'm seeing here are like really, they're almost like startup costs. So it's like, this is the cost for the teacher. This is to furnish the room. This is to make any physical modifications that you need to do. But what's the cost to continue operating in the sense of like there's more support staff, more yard aides, more maintenance to maintain these classrooms? What's the cost of, does this also then increase the number of kindergarten classes you have down the road? So then it's exponential in terms of the increase in cost and operating costs.
Yep. And so I'm going to start from the top and work my way down there real fast. Is just we're looking at possibly 6 sections based off the demographics. And remember, we already offer 8 sections of kindergarten and we max those classes out at 23 versus TK, we max out at 21. So if we were to keep all, say, 6 sections of those 117 kids, that'd mean we are actually reducing our actual kinder offer by 2 sections, because typically we have 8 sections of kinder. At least in the last 5 years I've been here, we've had 8 sections almost every single year that I've been here. And
Right.
so, yep. So the attrition is, we would be 6 currently for the 117. 2 of them we already run. We'd be looking at adding 4 additional sections.
Mm-hmm.
Those are one-time costs. President Wells, you'll see the per room. That's exactly what you're stating is for this program to work, if we were to accelerate it, this is what we were basically asking for. We worked with also our furniture people and stuff like that. So it's about $45,000 per room. So again, we're only adding 4 of those rooms because 2 already exist to replicate and be equitable amongst all 6 classrooms.
Right.
In addition, then go ahead.
You still have other costs like from support staff or admin.
Yep. Let me get at so the projected cost for maintenance and operations is what you're talking about, is like moving walls, anything like that, any sort of like oddities that may come up along the way. But at the very end, you'll see the annual costs. So those total upfront costs is only the $430,000. And we already are allocated $750,000 to get this program up and running.
From
so that's actually, from the state.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep. And so that 430 still gives us some wiggle room in case, like we stated, we already run 8 kinders. What if all of a sudden we have 8 TKs by opening this up? So then we still have some leftover funding to keep that and to order more things or do what we need to do. But the annual cost and what you're asking, President Wells, is at the bottom. For those additional sections, because it does require us to have a certificated staff member in addition to an instructional assistant. And again, that kind of addresses Mandy's questions around, Dr. Stern's questions around, the potty issues or using the bathroom. That's why in the earliest classes, we always have to have the instructional assistant that can assist with those bathroom breaks, or if there was a diapering situation, those types of things. And those are direct projections from our current salary schedule. So you have in that $800,000, 4 additional certificated teachers and 4 additional instructional assistants. That would be an annual cost to the district out of general fund.
Right, but you're still also adding like 100 kids to your system, so to speak. So you have admin, custodial, like just maintenance, just you're adding to the population, more rooms to clean, just all of those kind of other costs that you don't really think about. Are those so insignificant? They're just already, because the space is already there, it's just getting absorbed, so to speak?
So Ms. Wells, let me jump in real fast with an answer for you. This additional expansion of TK really is just going to stabilize the elementary enrollment. Without this expansion of TK, over the next 5-6 years, our elementary schools would actually begin to drop. So what you're going to see is you may see some additional TK classrooms, but pretty soon you're going to see maybe one fewer 3rd grade, one fewer 4th grade. So what this TK is going to do in the long run is stabilize the population of our elementary schools. It's really not going to increase it over the long run.
That
Right.
absolutely answers my question.
Yeah, and I was just going to add, Wade, that rather than what we would be looking at is with decreasing enrollment is right sizing our district. So right sizing our staffing. Instead of right sizing, now we're still appropriately staffed because we now have additional kids. And those teachers are more shifting rather than being reduced.
Uh-huh.
Can I ask one question? The funds from the state to do this program, Dustin, they are there for just this year, or would they be a possibility if we delay it for 1 year that they could be there also there for the next year to do the program?
I know that answer. I had the opportunity to sit in the state legislative meeting this morning, and they're actually working on additional fund sources and grant opportunities for school districts that are in the process or in continuing the process of the TK program. So these are one-time funds that you see on the screen that we have received, but there are additional ones coming through the pipeline that the state had mentioned this morning at our state legislation meeting.
Yeah, I still have this one little question going through my head that you said that with space available and so on. I mean, I know that Horace Mann was stuffed to the gills in classes this year, as I recall. And if you're looking at adding, and according to this, you're adding two new classrooms at each school probably, because you're saying, unless that includes the 2 we already have, are you saying there's going to be 8 or is there going to be 10 if we have these numbers? I don't understand how all of a sudden we have classrooms available for this and we have to do modifications to go with it.
So that's a great question. And so we spent cabinet and site administration, went through each site map, and we do have additional classrooms open at both sites. Again, there will be some shifting because we like to keep our TK kids together, our kinder kids together. So we may have to move a special education classroom to the 2nd floor. So I'm going to use Horace Mann as an example. We have additional 4th and 5th grade classrooms open on that 2nd floor that not a lot of people are privy to because you don't go over to that area. But now we'll move, go ahead. Yep, now we'll move some of those programs that may have lived in building A to building B, and that opens up space, whether that be, again, a technology classroom, it could be a learning center, it could be, it could have been an adventure camp room or a quarantine room that might have looked filled or used before. We can move some of those into other locations. And that goes into that kind of that moving, that one-time cost of that, moving walls, et cetera. If we're already going to move people, we should move them all at once instead of making a bunch of people mad each year.
What about special ed at this level, 4-year-old special ed classes?
Well, Laura,
you're speaking about the preschool at Hawthorne?
Well, you're going to be going down to 4-year-olds. I don't know if that preschool program at Hawthorne is run.
We already identify them. We get them as they turn 3 and they come in from the regional center and private school. So we already do intake with them and have our program for students who need additional support available. We've been running that already. That was here when I came to the district in 2017. So we have a program available for those students.
Noah,
So
did you have a comment?
Thank you, Mary. And did you bring enough brownies for everybody?
Sorry.
Dustin, looking at the enrollment numbers, you're capping the classes at 21. What happens if you get, let's say you add 3 more pre-K I mean TK classes, and then you have one extra kid that comes in later in the year. What is our game plan for overages, for are there wait lists, or we're hiring immediately? Because if we make it a policy, then don't we have to educate them?
I am glad you asked. So ultimately, we have a policy for the enrollment process. That's the approval process. Internally, we can close at that February 2nd if we fill our sections and a new 4-year-old comes past that point. We could put that student on a wait list if that was what would happen at that time, to prevent basically opening up another section. But our goal is to want to be able to create that foundation, keep the kids in the district and use them. I want to say,
so Dustin, let me just clarify that. So, because your goal seems to be against the action of closing the section and putting somebody on a wait list. So what is it going to wind up being if you close out, let's say you close out at 21, you have 4 or 5 sections of 21. Somebody comes in a month later, wants to enroll, they meet the eligibility deadline. You could say to them, you're on a wait list now, or do you want to get them in?
I selfishly, I want to get them in. So that's me. But
Okay.
the law says any student before February 2nd has the right to access this program. So if that person fell, especially within that February 2nd deadline, we would have to open up another section. It wouldn't be a choice at that point.
Understood. So really, we're at the whim of the state changing their numbers. So it really wouldn't be a big problem until 25. That's when they expand that age range, right?
Yeah,
That's when you're going to have to let in more of those people.
Yep. And at
Okay.
25 is when I think we internally, we hope, I'm going to overshare for myself, is this also gives us time to get ready for 25, because 25 is what Dr. Stern was even mentioning, is that we would see possibly some 3-year-olds enrolling and being on our campus because it's September 2nd. It goes from June 30th to September 2nd in 25. So we start in August, so you could literally have a 3-year-old starting school and turning 4 while enrolled. We'd be celebrating their 4th birthday in TK.
Okay, so my final question is, has all this been run through
Next, man.
Wade's office as far as budget and for maintenance, M&O construction to do any work and make sure that it could be done in time?
So yeah, so that's a conversation we've been having over the last few days. Just to bring a little bit more clarity to the board, we're still getting numbers in as far as what the implementation dollars are going to be. So I think 750 is a reasonable number. It could be a little bit lower. It could be a little bit higher. We're also working to see what kind of facilities dollars are available, which goes to your question, Noah. And I'll be bringing a proposed contract to work with some folks to write some grants to get some additional TK facilities monies from the state. Those we know are going to be available for schools to get facilities monies.
So I just want to know if the physical structure, if we change this policy, is the physical structure going to be able to support it?
Yeah, I think it will. I think it will, Noah. I mean, there's some fairly minor changes that could have to happen at Horace Mann. One of the things you have to remember at Hawthorne is we can't do any major remodeling at Hawthorne because once we start that process, DSA gets involved and it opens that can of worms.
Right, but we're grandfathered, right?
Right.
Hawthorne?
So, so we can't really do much at Hawthorne, but Horace Mann, we've kind of eyeballed it and think it's doable. So,
Okay.
Anything else, guys?
Mandy, you had some questions?
I know that traditionally car line has been a nightmare, not only for synagogues I've been a part of, but schools when there's little ones. And then we have, there's the neighbors that complain about parking and all that. If you're potentially having 3-year-olds, which of course is a huge, generally pretty big developmental divide between the 3-year-old and the average 5-year-old. And so I'm saying that because then how the drama is of the parents who drop off the kid and they want to run out and they leave their car at the curb and all those problems. have you accounted for that shift in infrastructure, including staggering the arrival and departure time of our littles? Because I can't imagine having an interaction between, say, the 3-year-olds, poor things, leaving campus and a mass exodus of galloping like 9-year-olds.
So that's a great point. And one of the things that we actually have the opportunity is we have the 2 preschool classes, actually 3 preschool classes at Hawthorne currently. And so Sarah could jump in a little bit. She's already had to do the dry run of trying to accommodate those littles because they are coming on her campus, both the special education preschool and some of the city preschool students.
Right.
Before Sarah does, can I just say there are no 3-year-olds until 25.
Right.
There are no 3-year-olds till then.
Before Sarah jumps in, I would also maybe dovetail on that same question is, because the different age groups, and there is such a difference, and Mandy could probably speak to this better than I, but there's such a difference in the age developmentally from like the 4-year-olds to the 5-year-olds, the later ones. Like, is there an opportunity where you might group them into like the younger TK to the older TK if you're adding classes, so that you have like the you know, they're grouped closer to their age?
Yes, we did have an experience just recently with the TK program where we were doing that. So differentiating for teachers at this age. This is a meeting that Laura and I had with our current TK teachers. And there is some studies out there too that are saying exactly what you're saying. There is a difference between 4-year-olds. And so there is absolutely, and we talked about this with Reconfiguration, that the more sectioning that you have, the more flexibility you have as far as, working with different students, different levels, different readiness, the age group. It just gives you that more flexibility so that you can, make decisions within the school for younger and older.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just clarify one thing? If a student is turning 5 in June, let's say June 30th, do they go into kindergarten that year or are they going into TK? They're turning 5 in June of this year. Do they go into TK or do they go into kindergarten?
They go into kindergarten. 5-year-olds will go to kindergarten.
Okay, so we're talking about the kids that are still 4 years old. I want to just make sure that I understand.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So 4 turning 5, and then at 5 turning 6. Some of our kinders could turn 6 at the end of their kinder year. But yeah, so we're predominantly looking at our 4-year-olds right now. So we'll have additional 4-year-olds that'll eventually turn 5 on our campuses.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're 4 years old on September 30, you're still 4 years old on September 30. Was that the starting date? They will go to TK.
TK.
So the word UTK is not really, it's just UK, just TK.
It's
This
just
universal thing is
Same.
not another program. It is the program.
It is the program. It's the state's way of telling all the other school districts that they need to do this and that it's going to be offered for all students. We're fortunate where we already have been around the block. We've offered it. We felt the bumps and bruises, and we're doing it really well.
Mm-hmm.
We are rushing it a little bit because we didn't have much chance to really study it, and we're being asked to vote on this tonight. Well, I don't think this problem is on the agenda. The only thing that we're being asked to change is the policy dealing with the date the kids start kindergarten, as I understand it. It says if go back to that the change. The only thing we're being asked to change is
The next slide. Yep, there you go. Sorry.
The TK program showed the children whose 5th birthday occurs by June 5th. So if the kid's birthday does not, let's say he turns 5 after June 5th, he's got to go in the TK program before school starts?
Yes. And so ultimately what the study session and the question around on the agenda is exactly that. So right now, the board policy says that any student that would turn 5 before December 31st can enroll. That's the cutoff. After that, if you look.
Oh, I understand that. No, but you're offering that the student whose fifth birthday occurs by June 5th. If it occurs after June 5th, they have to go into the TK program.
June 30th.
By June 30th.
Yep.
So a student who's 5 before then can go into kindergarten, but the kid who's born August 1st or July 1st has to go into the TK program, even though he's already 5 years old when school starts.
Yep, that would be considered an older TK student.
That's why the argument for separating the TK students to the younger and the older.
Why don't you have that until school starts? Why not go with when school starts?
So we only have these following benchmarks that we can work within is the February 2nd, April 2nd, June 2nd, or June 30th. And that's really what we're coming to you guys to decide is really where's your comfortability level with changing the policy on, can we accelerate it all the way to up to the limit, which is June 30th? Or we automatically have to change the policy to reflect February 2nd.
I have a question.
Yep.
When talking about the classes and the space at Horace Mann, if for some reason you happen to have more classes for TK than anticipated, how much space do you have to grow at Horace Mann so that you're not eliminating other space for other programs?
So in our last building review with MAP, Principal Bugby, we can fit 3 TKs onto that campus within building A. We did in conversation look at possibly a 4th. Again, that would mean that we would be on the higher end, meaning that'd be close to 140 to 160 TK kids.
Mm-hmm.
And even the projections on the high end, Rebecca, if you go back to the projections, that maxes out at 146. So even if you look in 23 at 168 kids, again, that would be where we would start to hit that possibly 8 sections. And we would start to look at Hawthorne's campus.
For the overflow.
Correct.
Right. And do they have a lot more room to grow in that regard?
Principal Caber has a little more room, flexibility of shuffling. The decks, the chairs on the Titanic is what I always say.
You also have the possibility by that time that Rodeo will be open and you can have a preschool at that other school.
Right.
And
but I also want to ask this question, moving forward, you'll have your normal, oh no, I won't make any, I was thinking that moving forward, you'd have more first grade classes and then moving on more second, but that wouldn't, they'll still be the same. Okay.
Is there any thought that you could actually increase the size? So if typically you only had 2 TK and you had, what did you say, 8 sections of kindergarten?
Yep.
Could those 2 TK would then matriculate into kindergarten, but you'd still also get the inflow of kindergarten that you would have got from elsewhere? Is that possible? So you have families that wanted to keep their children in, say, a religious preschool, but they're still going to come in to kindergarten, and then the ones that started in your TK may start and stay.
Yeah, I mean, that could be a possibility. Unfortunately, I don't know that we'd have a way to be able to determine that. I do think, though, that for us, from an educational services standpoint, it's around us being able to teach and train students versus us receiving them. Like Laura had stated in the enrollment process, we get beat up pretty hard every year about not allowing because we only have the 2 sections.
Not
and
me.
so not me, you. but that now that we already know that we have to open it up, it allows us access to some of those families. I don't know that necessarily we're going to get all these extra random numbers, but I do think that we're confident that we can prepare for 146 if all of them showed up in the community.
So,
Sorry
so
about that.
Laura, I'm sorry, Rochelle, were you done?
No,
Guys, I'm
that's
gonna ask also that we let them finish the presentation because I don't want to preemptively ask questions if a lot of them will be answered.
And so
I would like to. go
Well
back.
timed,
Yeah, that's a way to speed things
I
up.
couldn't help myself. I couldn't
Very
help
well
myself.
All right, Noah, did you
Wanna
have a
go back?
question?
Yeah, Dustin, one last question, because I'd like
So
to get to
Noah,
the
then
item.
Rochelle.
Thank
Okay.
you. Dustin, the stability that Matt was talking about earlier, and do we know the percentage of TK students now currently? Do we have a track record of what percent of those enroll in our kindergartens? Do we get the majority of them enrolling? Do we get 50%? Do we know what that is?
That will come probably through my department.
Yes.
And generally, we see a high rollover. We don't have any reduction of numbers in our case sections. We have all those 42 students going forward, plus an additional, almost.
Well, of course, yes, I get that, but I'm saying just from our TK or current
What they're
TK,
in,
you have almost 100% enrolling K.
Unless they move out of the area. And like I said, we have a waiting list.
I got
and
it.
all other people, and they're ready to come.
Okay, I got it. No, that helps shed a little bit of light on Matt's theory of stability. So you start building your actual entire school from TK up is what happens, as opposed to really having that mystery in the kindergarten year that we have now, because we never know how many are coming from outside.
Right.
We project, but we don't know. All right, thank you. That's all I had.
Dr. Stern said they start somewhere and then they don't want to leave because they have friends, they have, a community and things like that.
Right. I think it's a great plan. My only question, wait, actually, I'm going to let Rochelle go next because she had a question. Go ahead, Rochelle.
I forgot what it was right now, but go ahead. I'll think of it while you're talking.
I'm just going to throw it out there. Is there any benefit to not going as fast? I hear all the reasons why to accelerate it to June 30. Is there any upside to not in terms of doing it a little slower because you have the option? Hearing none.
That was crickets.
Yeah,
It is. All right.
One of the pieces, can I just?
Go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, just add, Dr. Stern had asked earlier too, just around certifications. And so I want to be fully transparent. That was the one question that you'd asked earlier that I didn't address. And I mentioned it slightly that Dr. Horvath and I worked on a survey. We surveyed our current staff around anybody that had taught transitional kindergarten before July 1st of 2015, was grandfather claused into, we call it the California Teacher Credentialing. CTC is the acronym that I'll use throughout. They are grandfathered in to teach transitional kindergarten. In addition, so we surveyed our staff who did teach TK, because some of our staff came from outside districts.
Right.
If they have 24 hours or 24 credits of early childhood education, which also then there's a lump sum of those. And then we've been working on creating a cohort through our Educators Effectiveness Grant of finding an outside vendor, not vendor's a bad word, like West LA or Santa Monica College. Yeah, to bring them in to create like this cohort to educate even just more staff. I don't think early literacy skills is a bad thing to learn. And so trying to get even more of our staff to enroll in that cohort through our Educators Effectiveness and use that as a PD plan for this next year, because by 2023, they have to be cleared by the CTC to teach TK. Next year will be the only year they'll allow for any misassignments within that TK grade band.
I believe, just to piggyback on that, is one of the things that I know the board had mentioned at one of our previous board meetings about leadership pipelines and leadership succession plans. And Dr. Bragi, myself, and Dustin talked about creating pipelines of positions in our district where even some of our students, we create something through our CTE program where students become aides in classrooms, work their way through college into then teaching positions, and then move up. And then what we want to do is put in place natural progressions and steps for both certificated and classified staff. Eventually, it's a little more challenging at a small district like ours, but I think it's a great opportunity in programs like this where we'll need teachers or instructional assistants and things like that. So I think that this is just a good opportunity to partner with local universities to create these programs to get these folks credentialed and fully credentialed for that piece.
Well,
I mean-
relative to other professions or credentialing, it's a pretty, I mean, I don't want to say that it's an easy one, but it's a pretty light, you know, it's like 24 hours or something like that for the certification.
Yeah, and one of them.
Yeah, that's not a huge expense. So that's good.
No, and most of it, I think, I mean, we worry about credentialing at the senior high school, middle school level with the single subject credentialing. This is going to be one more like we'll have opportunities to demonstrate. A lot of our teachers will be able to say, well, you know, they'll find credits and we will look for them to justify those positions. And I wouldn't be as overly concerned about misassignments at the TK level, especially with our multiple subject folks, as we are, you know, at that senior high school level where credits are involved. So I think you're right, man. I think it's going to be a pretty easy one to justify.
Yep.
I would challenge you to also look at like what type of support that program has in terms of really kind of defining itself. It's not just adding more classes, but you're really kind of creating a TK community. So is there parent support? Is there, you know, like kind of building that community for that group of parents that have children that age? It's really more about them developmentally. That really creates what that program is, instead of just adding classes into the pipeline.
Yeah, and President Wells, what you just said is so important, because it's having that critical mass, because you know you have additional sections, you have more opportunities to bring parents together. Sometimes when you have two sections, you just get a sparse group of parents that might want to come. Like the more kids that you have in a program, it helps us with the overall vision of the program, and
Right.
a new concentration on just early childhood, which is something that's really needed.
Yeah, meeting the needs of that developmentally age appropriate group.
Yep.
So just a technicality on the agenda item, Michael, you're asking for a first reading, but my understanding is you need the policy in place by Tuesday.
So like we've done before, with a first reading is just a, you know, just a friendly motion to, you know, go into a final and, you know, final approval.
No. We can move to waive the first reading and vote on the
Right.
second. That's fine. But what I'm concerned about is was that your plan if you need this policy in place before Tuesday?
Right.
Yes, that was our plan.
Okay.
Well, Noah, you just brought up what I had remembered I was going to say is that we're rushing in to make this decision tonight in view of the fact that you have to have this in place by next Tuesday when you open up the enrollment. And we already have a TK in place right now. Why are we rushing? That's what I don't understand. Why are we being pressured to get this in right now if we already have something in place and we have more time to really make sure that this is what well, obviously we're going to go that direction, but to make sure that we really are completely got all our ducks in order as we go forward.
Well, there needs to be a policy change anyway, because the requirement is the February 2nd date. So that would have to happen anyway.
The change that you're making that I saw, and that's where I started off this whole presentation with, is that you have a change only as far as when kids can start kindergarten. And you said that they can now start kindergarten up till the age of up until September 30th. After September 30th, they then go into TK, according to that. But it doesn't offer all the rest of that stuff that you're talking about.
The amended policy seems specific to TK. Am I reading something different?
Yeah, just to that one date, Noah.
The June 30th.
Just the June 30th.
No, it's on the, you're not thinking of it as TK, Rochelle. It's 4-year-olds up until
Right.
June 30th.
Right.
No, but I know that, but at age 30, and June 30th, if a kid is 5 years old, they can go in, according to that, the policy, the way I just read it, they can go into kindergarten. If they have a birthday after that, they go into TK. That's the way I read that policy.
So, Rochelle, I think the important questions that we have to walk away with as trustees is if we enact a policy change in full tonight, the three things I'm thinking of is, can we support the program financially? Can we support the program physically? And can we support the program with staff? Okay, those are the three questions. Now, I think that staff has chimed in, admin has chimed in, yes to all of those. And I think we were pretty specific, and we even have our site leaders here too, as to what we think this is going to take and if they can deliver what it will take. They seem confident in the ability to do that. That's the only thing that would keep me from supporting this in full. Otherwise, we're going to do this anyway, right? It's coming to this anyway. So I was a little hesitant because I'm on the facility aspect, but they're saying that they've worked it out, they've walked it through, and they can do it. Wade thinks they can do it. Craig thinks they can do it. Dustin thinks they can do it. So I have to just say, okay, if you guys think you can do it, it's going to be on you now to do it, because the policy comes back to the board, but the execution comes back to staff.
Well, I have to tell you, I mean, in terms of what's good for the kids, there's a question in my mind. This is a program that we should use because that's what this is all about. And if we have all of those things, the only thing that I'm concerned about is being forced to rush into it. That's the only thing that I'm concerned about. And that doesn't.
You mean as a district being forced or as the board being forced?
You're being forced. Yes, we're the ones that are voting for it tonight.
May I make a suggestion? Rochelle, I hear what you're saying and that you feel that you're being that this is a pressured decision for you. I understand that you'd like to have this decision, Michael, by the 22nd. Is there a way, be in time for the 22nd, and our meeting is on the 22nd. So is there some way some sort of compromise where we can do a provisional approval tonight? And then do you think, Rochelle, that by the 22nd, you would be comfortable?
Well, I need to tell you that after tonight's meeting, I'm not more comfortable than I was when I heard about it 2 weeks ago.
Right.
Okay.
Or, can we have a provisional vote, or we go up to February 2nd or April 2nd, and then before the 22nd, we officially vote on it on Tuesday? Is that too late? Is there a way that you can do that from how you do your enrollment so that it can give Rochelle until Tuesday to feel comfortable?
Yeah, we would have to make changes, and then we would have to keep track of anyone who wanted to enroll that had the later birth dates on Tuesday. So it would cause some additional tracking, but yeah, we could do it.
It's going to be harder on staff.
Should we have the enrollment start on the 23rd?
We could. We've been announcing the 22nd, but we could.
Okay.
We could. Yeah.
How
Can I
about
also
for
just
TK,
say-
and then just gives, I want to, out of respect to Rochelle, to have that time. I'd like her to have that time and any other questions, but I don't want to screw up your program. But if it's something that's doable, can we do that?
Is there a way that you can say that pending to take the application on Tuesday and let them know after the board votes whether it will be acceptable? That's what's going to happen.
I think yes, we could, but I think probably the best way to do it with Dr. Brege's approval would be to just push the open enrollment date back by 1 day.
That sounds better to me.
Yeah, that's what I would do.
It's more clean. Yeah.
I also want to just add that
from the standpoint of the public eye, I think that would also look better also, because I think it would give them to think that if they thought that this meeting was about just to discuss it, and then we already are pushing it, I think that would give the appearance to the public that we are doing it so that we can vote on it on Tuesday.
Yeah, I just want to add too that, this is so last minute, and I know that that's always uncomfortable. And, I think that as a cabinet, we've done a really good job of providing you with information in advance and really having time to be able to study things. We were actually working on this at the same time as things were changing. We were actually in a meeting and we were putting a presentation together, and Wade was able to provide something with us that was just changing within the law. And so it's kind of like it's, putting the plane together while you're flying it is a lot of what's happening with this universal TK program throughout the state. And that's why people are pushing back they want more, school districts want more money. And that's why we think we're going to get it, because everybody's in this situation. But I of course feel badly that this has come up and the board feels rushed, but really policies, the law, all changing while we were doing this. And it just happened to be that we've already had our enrollment date.
You may
So-
end up getting even more enrollment if we are able to get that done and other districts are not.
Right,
You know,
exactly.
that's
So,
what happened.
so that's a great point, Mary, because if we put the second reading on the agenda for Tuesday, then it'll become more public
Mhm.
than it is at a special meeting on a Thursday before a 4-day holiday.
And I think that's important.
Yeah, Rochelle, do you know what information that you need from staff to help further your research?
I'm not comfortable with the facilities, to be very honest. That's the one thing that I am concerned about. Because I'm hearing from Horace Mann and from the other school that they were just sardine packed with the program when we went to reconfiguration. And
Well,
that's
Mr. Bugby is here. So I think he could address his site. I don't know, Miss Caber is still on or she's on a different screen.
This Caber had
Okay.
Pajamarama. So-
She's at Pajama-rama.
Sorry.
TMI.
So Craig, I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Absolutely.
Reconfiguration. All
Yeah,
I heard was we were packed up like sardines. And I'm not,
And we were in the beginning.
okay, what has changed?
Things have kind of leveled out. We have, I believe, 5 or 6 true classrooms right now that are either occupied by a one-person special ed teacher or by the JPA, by Adventure Camp. So those are rooms that we could use easily. I have other things in mind that I would prefer not to open this can of worms here. While it's
Craig,
being
you have 2
recorded.
COVID rooms. You have 2 COVID rooms right now. You have an isolation room and you have a
Correct.
COVID testing room dedicated. That were both classrooms.
Right. We have 2 open spaces in building A right now, and we have some other ideas of what we could do to make things work.
And if I understood correctly, you also have Hawthorne. So you may have, you know, it may not be the same number of TK classes at each site, but,
Correct.
you know, alluding to what we had discussed earlier with the city, we're talking about, you know, future ideas for early education that, you know, one day they may all end up together someplace.
Correct. So as of right now, we have the space that we could balance the classes. If we do get an overflow, that would have to go to Hawthorne most likely. If we can do what we're hoping, we would still have some extra space at Horace Mann.
And Mrs. Marcus, to address your reconfiguration, initially when we reconfigured the district, we initially slotted Horace Mann with 760 students and less than 500 students at Hawthorne. And then over the last 3 to 4 years, those lines have blurred a little bit, meaning some of the families have requested transfers into Hawthorne. And so the dust is kind of settled. Some families went one way, some went the other. So now both of our elementaries are almost identical at like 530 kids and like 560 kids. So that's you.
Hawthorne, 586 at Horace Mann.
Yep. And so some of our teachers have moved from Horace Mann to take over that load at Hawthorne. So Craig lost probably 2 to 3 teachers, I think, over the last 2 to 3 years.
Correct.
To move them over to teach at Hawthorne. So that was part of it.
Craig, do you have any idea? And I know Sarah's not here to talk about it. Have you discussed with Sarah her availability?
Yeah, we were all in the room together. We went through all of the site maps together. And let me just throw this one in for those of us that went through reconfiguration. Mrs. Caber and I have said, this is going to be nothing. This will be easy.
Yes.
You've been well trained.
The chairs are all,
We're not talking about the whole school, you know.
it's smaller chairs and tables. It's just easier right off that.
Yeah, but parents are a bigger pain in the butt. The younger the kid is, the more stressed out they are. We all know that. Good luck with separating on the first day of school. You better get a committee just for that, the separation committee. I'll help.
That's where you all come in.
That's where the parent support comes in.
That's where we have. That's where we have the hose in front,
Important.
and we just
Yeah, that's why we have guards.
No, it's important to have that parental support. I think.
no,
it's
for
a-
sure. But it's a very neurotic
intro to going to
crowd.
school. Yeah.
Well.
You know, a nice thought is a nice,
No,
sorry, go ahead, Rochelle.
state has mandated it. I mean, it's not that I mean, I have to go, you know, yes, it's there. The question has been to rush into it was number one. And I was really upset that, that this UTK came up and we were talking about TK with one, and I didn't have the information. I really had to look at this very closely tonight to really, to get it straight, because I did not feel that I was well prepared. And I like to be well prepared when I'm going to talk about something. So this was another thing. And
I
so-
would make a suggestion that if everybody feels comfortable pushing the enrollment day back to the 23rd, I know it's not ideal, but as well, because Gabe is not here for this rest of this conversation, if we can have that on the agenda for Tuesday, I think it would be better if that's a possibility and everybody's comfortable with that.
I would feel very comfortable with that. I would appreciate it, but it's up to.
I would still like to do the first reading tonight, if that's okay,
That's
President
fine.
Weiss.
I have no problem with
Yeah,
that.
Okay.
I agree. Is
Okay.
that, Laura, Michael, Dustin, what do you think?
Sure,
Fine with that.
we can make it work.
Okay, that would be great. I think that's a
You can
good.
blame Mrs. Marcus for the reason.
No, it threw
Well,
off
this is,
us.
it's a public reading, Michelle, you just did.
Okay, well
All right,
then,
so I'll
should-
make a motion to approve the first reading of Board Policy 6170.1 TK.
any
I'll
second?
second.
Amanda seconds.
I second it.
Vandy seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Thank you all very much.
I think one of the best things about this also is when we reconfigured the district and we took away basically the number of years that we were at our schools, right? Kids used to be there K-8.
Yep.
You know, now we'll get to add a 6th year that you get to be at those campuses. And we're going to have Horseman and El Rodeo, which are going to be our 2 nicest campuses. And we're going to have our students 6 years on those campuses. And it'll hopefully all kind of pay out in the end.
And a
So-
bonus is that the lost and found will expand exponentially on these sites. You'll have a whole bunch of merch that you can sell for funding any project.
First, you're gonna have to.
What an interesting way of looking at it.
What kind of hustle are you running, Mandy?
Well, I can't share that with you in public.
All right.
And the
All right,
other-
well, I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. I appreciate it. It's 7 o'clock on a Thursday, which I know for some of you is not unusual, but again, thank you very much. And Michael, if we can add that to the agenda before it goes out tonight.
You
that would
bet.
be great.
I
Okay.
think Pam posted, but we're gonna, I'll call Pam right after this meeting.
I've
Have a
already.
gr- Have a great
unposted.
holiday weekend, everybody.
I'll let you know.
No problem.
All right, this meeting is officially adjourned. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.